Ever get that feeling? Like that feeling of about to go down a research rabbit hole. That's us today. And oh boy, this is a big one.
Yeah.
Astral projection.
Out-of-body experiences.
People have been talking about these forever. Centuries.
And we've got, well, I think it's a treat for the listeners.
Okay.
A collection of first-hand accounts.
Ooh.
From a book called The Phenomena of Astral Projection.
Okay, so these are real stories.
Real people claiming to have left their bodies behind.
At least for a little bit, temporarily.
Right. Now, the author is where things get interesting. Sylvan Muldoon, big believer in astral projection. I mean, he claimed he did it all the time. So, keep that in mind.
That does kind of change how you read the stories,
Exactly. He's not exactly an unbiased narrator.
Right.
He's presenting all these stories as proof, Like, this is it. This proves that astral projection is real. But we're coming at it, at least I am, as we're trying to be critical but also open-minded,
I like that. It's like that feeling you get when you're hearing a good ghost story.
Yeah.
Like a little creeped out, but also maybe it could happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, let's jump into it. Muldoon, he has these categories of projections.
He does.
And one of them is spontaneous projections, which is sort of what it sounds like, right? Like, you don't plan it.
You don't plan it. It just happens.
It just happens.
Yeah.
So what kind of situations are we talking about that would trigger this kind of out-of-body experience?
Okay, so picture this. You're drifting off to sleep.
Or you're super stressed out about something, or this is a big one, you're having a near-death experience.
Whoa.
And then suddenly, bam, you're looking down at yourself from the ceiling.
That's wild. Did people, even though the triggers were so different, did they have similar experiences?
Yeah, that's what's so interesting is despite all these different situations, there are these common threads.
Okay.
Like a lot of people talk about that feeling of floating,
Yeah.
seeing your own body from outside yourself.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes even encountering these beings or entities.
Wait, hold on. Other beings.
Yeah, like something out of a movie,
Okay,
right?
now you've got my attention.
Yeah, and they describe these places, these settings where they encounter these beings as like incredibly peaceful, like just beautiful and serene, almost like they've stepped into another dimension.
This is wow. Did Muldoon say who these beings were? Did the people have any idea?
Okay, well, that's where it gets really interesting because he talks about people meeting these, what they call spirit guides or helpers who, offer comfort.
Oh, wow.
Guidance during these astral journeys. But like, are these actual entities or just like manifestations of the subconscious,
Oh man, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
Right.
So for our listeners, imagine seeing your own body from above. What did that even feel like, according to these people?
Well, one woman, Mrs. Parker, described feeling like she was being pulled out of her body.
Oh, wow.
While she was lying in a hospital bed.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and she could see the doctors. She could see the nurses working on her. She tried to talk to them.
Really?
But it was like they couldn't even hear her.
So she was like invisible.
Yeah, like a ghost in her own life.
Wow.
And then there's another account, a man who was under anesthesia during surgery.
Oh, wow.
Remember separating from his body and actually watching the surgery.
No way.
Yeah.
That's fascinating, but also kind of terrifying.
Right. To be conscious during surgery is one thing, but to be out of your body watching it?
That's a whole other level.
Makes you wonder what's really going on with our consciousness.
Yeah.
Like, do we shift into another dimension? Or is the brain just playing tricks on us?
Right. So Muldoon, he has all these accounts from people, and they all have these common themes. It makes me wonder, did anybody experience, was there a reason they were seeing what they were seeing? Was there a purpose?
That is the question, isn't it?
Right.
It's like, why are we here?
Right, exactly.
But yeah, Muldoon, he devotes a good chunk of the book to people seeing things during these projections that they later confirmed were real.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Like they saw something happen and then they were like, oh, it
actually happened. And it's like, how is that possible?
That's wild.
And he was really drawn to these visions of like deceased loved ones.
Oh, wow. So like actually communicating with people who have passed on.
Yeah, like, is there something to that? Those stories we hear.
Yeah.
He tells us one story that's really something else. You got a woman who claimed she projected to her dying son's bedside.
Wait, was he in the same hospital?
No. He was miles away.
What?
Miles away. And she describes being drawn to him, witnessing his passing. And here's the kicker. She later confirmed details about his death with her family that there's no way she could have known.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay, now that's giving me goosebumps.
Right. I mean, if these stories are even remotely true, what does it mean about consciousness?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Right.
Wow.
That's what we're going to keep exploring as we, go deeper into this.
Okay. So for everyone listening, imagine if you could verify details from an out-of-body experience. Like, it makes you wonder what's real and what's not,
Totally.
So we talked about spontaneous projections. What other types of projections did Muldoon talk about?
So spontaneous projections were just the tip of the iceberg. Muldoon, he also dug into what he called experimental projections.
Experimental projections.
Yeah, so instead of it just happening to you, these are people actually trying to have an out-of-body experience.
Intentionally, you mean? Wow.
Yeah, like, okay, I'm going to leave my body now.
Sign me up. Right.
Okay, maybe not sign me up, but tell me more. How do you even do that?
Think of it like meditation, but like way more intense.
Okay.
Muldoon talks about relaxation techniques, visualization, this deep mental concentration. He even gives you steps, like a guide.
Like a how-to manual for leaving your body.
Right. But he says even if you do all that, it's still not like a guaranteed thing.
I can imagine. That makes sense. I mean, to quiet your mind enough to do that.
Right, to get to that level of stillness. Let alone launch your consciousness into the astral realm.
It's like mental gymnastics, right?
Totally. So this is what I wonder about, though. When these people are doing this, what's actually happening in the brain?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Like, are they really tapping into something real, or is it all just a big, brain trick?
Yeah. Like a super realistic hallucination or something.
Right. And that's what's so cool is even though Muldoon was writing almost 100 years ago, now neuroscientists are starting to understand these altered states of consciousness.
Oh, wow. Really? So science is finally catching up to what people have been experiencing for who knows how long. Please tell me they're not just, debunking it all.
Well, no, it's not about debunking. It's about understanding.
Okay.
Like what's happening during these experiences.
Yeah.
For example, they've done research on temporal lobe activity during these kinds of altered states.
Oh, yeah.
And that part of the brain, the temporal lobe, it's connected to dreams, memory, sensory input.
Oh, wow.
It's like the brain's entertainment center,
Right. And what about the vestibular system?
Yeah.
That's the one that helps with your balance and spatial awareness, right?
Yes. So when someone's having that floating sensation or they feel detached from their body, their vestibular system could be going haywire.
That's amazing. It's like our brains are so complex and we're still learning so much. It's like the final frontier, right? But even if we can explain it all scientifically, it doesn't make these experiences any less profound,
Exactly. Muldoon, he said that over and over again. Whether or not these experiences are real.
You're right.
Like if the soul actually leaves the body, they change people.
That's really interesting. So these experiences are transformative, even if we don't totally understand them.
Totally.
It's like that saying, the map is not the territory. We can have all the science in the world, but each person's experience is going to be totally unique to them.
For sure.
So, we were talking about those spirit guides and helpers earlier.
Yeah.
Did those encounters, happen more with one type of projection over another, like spontaneous versus intentional?
That's a good question. And it's interesting. Muldoon found that, those encounters, they could happen with either type.
Okay.
But the people who actively tried to project, they seem to report those encounters more often.
Oh, wow. So it's almost like if you're seeking it out, you're more likely to find it.
Maybe, yeah. Like focusing your intention somehow opens you up to these experiences.
Makes you wonder if it's like priming the brain or something, like setting an intention for your dreams, but on a way bigger scale.
Totally. And think about the settings these encounters are happening in.
Okay.
These aren't ordinary places, right?
Yeah.
We're talking these serene landscapes, beautiful gardens, otherworldly realms.
Like something out of a fantasy novel.
Right. So is the subconscious just getting really creative, or are these glimpses into another dimension?
Okay, now we're getting really deep here.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to think about.
Right. And that's what makes these topics so fascinating.
Cool.
And Muldoon's book, it gives you a lot to think about.
For sure. It's like he opens a door to all these possibilities. So I want to ask the listeners, if you could choose, to have an out-of-body experience, would you want it to just happen?
Interesting.
Or would you try to make it happen?
Yeah, yeah.
It's something to think about as we keep going and talk about the bigger picture. It's wild to think people have been talking about this stuff for, like, ever, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Way before Muldoon wrote his book.
Way before, yeah. Muldoon's book. That was 1929.
Wow.
But these stories, I mean, these go way back.
Right.
Ancient spiritual traditions, philosophy, old folklore, it's all there. People have always been fascinated by this stuff.
Huh. So it's not just like a modern thing. I kind of always thought it that way.
Nope. The idea that your soul, your consciousness, can separate from the body.
Yeah.
That's ancient. And it's
Yeah.
like we're hardwired to wonder about this stuff.
I guess it makes sense. If you're like an early human looking up at the stars, you'd start to wonder, right?
Exactly.
What if I could just float up there, see what it's like?
And that's what's so cool about it.
Yeah.
Whether you believe it literally or not, it makes you think bigger.
Yeah. Pushes the boundaries a bit.
Totally.
Yeah.
So even if science explains how it all works,
Right.
there's still that mystery.
There's still that whoa factor.
Exactly. We love science, but come on, the unknown is way more fun, right?
Totally. Like those spirit guides we were talking about.
Yeah.
What if there's something more there that we just don't get yet? Whoa, okay, now I'm getting chills again.
Right.
It's like in those movies where the character, they think they know everything.
Yeah.
And then, bam, there's this whole other world they never even knew existed.
It makes you question everything.
Everything.
And that's why we do this, right?
Right.
It's not just about astral projection. It's way bigger. It's about reality. What we can even know about consciousness. The big questions.
It's like Muldoon left us clues,
Yeah.
you know? Like, he's saying, come on, figure it out.
He's like, I don't have all the answers.
Right, exactly.
But let's have this conversation.
Exactly. So whether you're listening and you're like, yep, astral projection is real, or nah, I'm not so sure, or even if you're somewhere in between, it's got you thinking.
Yeah,
It's got you asking questions,
Yep.
right?
And that's the point.
And maybe, just maybe, looking at the world a little differently. I like that. Okay, so we're wrapping up our deep dive on these out-of-body experiences, but I have to ask one more question.
Hit me.
If you could have an out-of-body experience, where would you go, and what would you look for? Think about it. Until next time, keep exploring, keep those questions coming, and never stop diving deep.